Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Inside LSU Baseball. This is wild. Season 2 kicks off today. And let me just say, this is football season. I'm fully aware that the LSU Tigers have their opening game at Clemson in just a few days, and that pretty much the whole world is thinking about that. So you have to be a special kind of psycho to be caring about LSU baseball and tuning in to this podcast right now. And that's why I love you, because so many of you do care. This is the best program in the country, the best fan base in the country. And it's just amazing that just a initial press conference from Jay Johnson can spark so much interest. And so here we are. We are going to react to Jay Johnson's presser, his initial presser today for the fall season, just briefly. And then we're going to get into my 5 biggest fall storylines. Look, there's a lot of time, between now and the start of the season. But there are some things that I'm very interested to see when the team gets cracking. And so just kind of wanted to share those with you. Thanks as always for tuning in and following me on Twitter. I started this Inside LSU Baseball account, I want to say it was January. And, I'll be honest, I was glad when I had maybe like 200. I just started posting things that interest me that I could look back on and either see how wrong I was about them or just have like something to look back on. And this thing got pretty pretty interesting, pretty much fun. I think it's up to like 2,700 followers right now. And that's not because of me. That's just because so many people are interested in LSU baseball. So thank you so much for just tapping in with me. I have a lot of fun doing this, and let's jump right in, because you already know I don't like to do a whole bunch of small talk. I hate listening to podcasts and hearing them talk about nothing. So let's jump right in. So Jay had his introductory press conference today, and there wasn't a whole lot that I heard Jay say. Some of the questions that were asked, it's just so early in this thing that I think it was mostly just kind of saying, hey, this is the roster, kind of how this thing came together. I don't know. Jay didn't look too enthusiastic to be up there, to be honest. And but, maybe I'm wrong. It just, he was just kind of straight to the point, and that's what we got. But one of the first things that I gathered out of it that I didn't know and I was interested to know was that this week when school started, they started what he said was like their 8-hour window. I think it's per week, where the guys can do individual work. They can work with the strength coach, Chris Martin, things like that. They can't be out there practicing. They can be doing on their own work. So that will last up until October 8th. On October 9th, that starts the 45 days of team practices, which basically goes up until the week before Thanksgiving. And, they're going to have their the Jamie versus Chief World Series, then the Purple and Gold World Series. They've got a couple of exhibitions in Biloxi against Sanford, as well as they go to Southeastern. So there's going to be opportunity to watch the Tigers scrimmage, as well as a couple of exhibitions. So that'll be good stuff. But that starts, like the team practice start October 9th. So from now until then, just a lot of player development things, everybody getting back into the mix. So my initial thoughts, and look, if you follow me on Twitter, I haven't really stopped posting things and tweeting about things. So some of these things I'm going to say, you might have already, seen my or kind of heard my point of view on them or know where I'm coming from. But if not, if this is your first time kind of jumping back in since the season ended, when I think about the 2026 team, There's like three things that stand out to me. Number one is I believe that this is the best returning group of players that Jay has had since being at LSU. And that's my opinion. I think this is a very solid core group that's coming back. I mean, you talk about the entire starting outfield of Derek Carriel, Chris Stanfield, Jake Brown, the starting shortstop, and Stephen Milam, Kader and Beatty, who played a ton last year in that catcher position. And that's just position players I'm talking about. But like Jay made a comment in the presser today that of all the players that were on the postseason roster, all but one came back this year. And I think the only one that didn't was probably Ashton Larson. I think I'm probably right on that. But you got 19 returning players this year. All right. So that's a very big group that Jay's getting back. And it's a group after winning the national championship. So many times after you win, you lose a lot to the draft and you're trying to rebuild. This is a great core group. So that's number one. The second thing is this pitching staff returns 80 plus SEC innings. And if you put that in perspective, the 2025 team, so this time last year, going into the 2025 fall season, that team returned 4.5 SEC innings. That was it. And that team won the national championship. So a lot of, new guys stepped in, a lot of development. But like, you're starting the season with guys that, were great for you last year. They pitched in a lot of big situations. And, so I feel really good about the returning innings that you bring back. Now, you lack a frontline arm that, maybe like the Luke Holman that came in proven. Anthony Einstein was a proven arm on last year's team. So you don't really have maybe that, a proven starter. And maybe if you say Cooper Moore from Kansas, but you've got lots of guys who pitched in big spots last year that can do it all. You had guys that start, relief, relievers. So you got a lot. So I feel great about the pitching. The other is the infield defense. That's what stands out to me. And let me just start with this thought, and then I'll give you my 5 biggest fall storylines. I'll launch into that after. But entering 2025, you had a 3-man race at shortstop. All right, if you go back to last year, you had the returning starting shortstop, Michael Braswell. You had Danny Dickinson, who any interview he did leading up to the fall or even the season, any podcast he went on, all he talked about was how important it was for him to win the shortstop position at LSU. All right. And Jay said he was getting a crack at winning that shortstop job. And then you had Stephen Milam, who was the best glove we saw in the 2024 team, but you just didn't know. Is he going to make the transition? Now, later in the fall or even in the winter is when Jay said, hey, Milam's going to play on the left side of the infield. But, going in, we really didn't have an idea. We just the thought was that, you had 3 great options, and whoever didn't win the job was going to just fill in at third base or second base between Dickinson, Milam, and Braswell. Not the case this year. We have a Gold Glove shortstop in Stephen Milam, and then a bunch of options, a bunch of guys that are known for their bats, not their defense ability, okay? I can go around the horn at each position, and it is very impressive what LSU has done in regards to the infield these last few years. So just stay with me on this. At third base, Michael Braswell, he committed 3 errors in 93 chances last year. That's coming off of 2024, where Tommy White made 3 errors in 105 chances. One of the great defensive transformations that we've seen. I mean, even going back to the year LSU won it all in 2023, towards the end of that year, Tommy White was starting to play really good third base. In the College World Series, he made a lot of good plays, and then he parlayed that in 2024 by being great defensively. So last year, Braswell makes 3 errors. The year before, Tommy White makes, 3 errors. So you've got a couple of guys that are just holding down that third base position. Now, we just saw the greatest shortstop play maybe at LSU defensive wise. I mean, Jay said it himself. I think it was on the D1 podcast last week or yesterday maybe. It was the greatest year that he's had a shortstop play. So Stephen Milam was incredible. And, since taking over that position, he's sticking there. So there's no worries there. All right. At second base, LSU had a really good player in Cade Doty that committed 14 errors Jay's first year in 2022. Since then, it's been 4 errors by Gavin Dugas in 2023. And look, he was playing with a bum shoulder. He didn't have a lot of range. There's probably a lot of plays he didn't get to that would just wound up being hits. But, so he wasn't flashy, but he made the routine play. And he didn't make errors. He made 4 errors. So that's 2024, 2023. 2024, you had Stephen Milam, who really showed us what kind of defensive player he was. He made 5 errors, and he had a lot more chances than Dugas did the previous year. So that's 4 errors and 5 errors. And then last year, Danny Dickinson, I mean, you can't say enough about it. Was a different style than Milam at second. Had that signature kind of stiff glove arm, playing those short hops off to the side of his body. But, man, he was steady Eddie at second base. Made great plays, saved a couple of games that I can remember. And so just gave you, a really solid glove. That's a lot of reliability at second base. You go Dugas, Milam, and then Dickinson. And then probably the most overlooked infield position is the one that touches the ball the most on balls that are put in play. And that's first base. LSU got 2 years of Trey Morgan and then 2 years of Jared Jones. Both, elite at picking throws in the dirt, making the right call on when to charge a ball or when to give ground. Also, just very good in-game decisions. I mean, we remember the play Trey Morgan made, charging the ball against Wake Forest in the World Series that saved that game, really. Jared Jones made some great double play turns throughout the year, made some really crucial short hop picks in the College World Series this past year. So, we had really, really good play all the way around the horn. Now, I treat the catcher position as its own deal because while it is part of the infield, it's just a completely different skill set altogether. But briefly, we've had a very solid, couple of years catching from Alex Milazzo and then Luis Hernandez this past year. Nothing flashy. They weren't going to throw a ton of guys out. They're not big-time pro prospects, but extremely solid and guys who provided a lot of calm and just leadership behind the plate. So with all that said, I'm going to launch into the 5 biggest fall storylines, and I'm going to stay on the catcher position. Storyline number 1 for me is Cade Arambidi at the catcher position. Can he take control behind the plate? That is a big question that I have. And let's just start by saying Cade Arambidi was the number 2 rated catcher out of the high school class when he was coming out of high school. He was a top 4 round draft prospect by MLB Pipeline in that 2024 draft. Joe Doyle just released his 2027 draft prospects in the college class and has Kate Arambidi listed as number 36 in the entire college class. Easily the most talented and pro-level catcher that Jay Johnson and Josh Jordan has had to work with at LSU. I know it looked rough early his freshman year at times, but I will say that Aaron Beatty wasn't particularly helped by some of these 57-foot breaking balls that Connor Ware and William Schmidt and whoever else were, throwing, and balls were bouncing all over the place on him. I mean, Aaron Beatty allowed 2 pass balls last year. 2. That's it. If you compare that to Tyler McManus in 2022, Hayden Travinski, even Brady Neal, and really even Luis Hernandez, I know he played a lot more, but like if you look at the scale of how many innings they played or chances they played, like Kate Arambidi actually played really well. 2 pass balls, 1 error on the entire season. So I think the defensive improvement will be the biggest factor for Arambidi. But this is a guy with a bazooka for an arm, very athletic, and he has got like extreme power. He was one of the best bats on the high school, travel circuit coming out of high school. I mean, the guy can hit. Now, didn't do particularly well on the Cape this summer, had a lot of strikeouts. Identifying spin and hitting breaking balls is something he's going to have to improve. But again, the biggest factor is going to be defense. We saw Blaze Priester last year lead LSU in home runs. He hit 7 home runs in the fall. First ballot Fall American, and he couldn't sniff the field. So that's pretty amazing. This is the guy we had penciled in. This is the DH. This is the catcher. Couldn't play. Transferred to Southeastern for this coming year, so good for him. But catcher is just such an important position for teams, and that is going to be the big thing for Kate Arambidi, and it's going to have a lot to do with the success of this team. They say every team, you got to be built up the middle: catcher, shortstop, center field. Well, look, you got Derek Curiel, center field, Stephen Milam, shortstop, and an ultra-talented Kate Arambidi at catcher, who did make a lot of improvement last year. I think a lot about Ryder Helfrich, who was the catcher for Arkansas this past year. He's going to be one of the top catchers drafted in this coming draft. Freshman year, you line him and Kate Arambidi up together. Very similar numbers offensively. Arambidi actually probably had a little better numbers. But again, if he can make the type of jump that Helfrich made, we are in good shape. So that's number 1 was Kate Arambidi. Number 2 storyline for me this fall is Trent Caraway. He's the transfer that came over from Oregon State. There are always guys that we want to see make a jump, that we wonder, hey, we've got high hopes for this guy. What can he turn into? Heck, there's a lot of those guys on this team that I could include in this group. But Trent Caraway is so talented that he has the ability that if he's what we think he can be, can have a drastic impact on both offense and defense for LSU. Now, Jay's taken similar projects like a couple of different years. I mean, you think about Jacob Berry, Tommy White, both guys that, you didn't know how they were going to look at third base. And Trent Caraway is more of that type of player, a bat first, a guy that's athletic. He's got a good arm that, is going to get a chance to play that third base position. And, if he can shore up the glove the way that Tommy White did and unlock another gear offensively, Caraway's a 20 home run guy that can end up as a day one draft pick. I'm talking like second round, third round, like very, very high. Matter of fact, as we were going into like not this past draft, last year's draft, when he came out of high school, I mean, this is a guy that was projected as like a first rounder. I mean, just ultra talented. Jay says it all the time. You want to have major leaguers on your team. Not everybody can be a major leaguer. Some guys are just very good college players. Cade Beloso, very good college player, right? But it's good to have those guys that they have those tools that can make it to the next level. And Trent Caraway makes this team even scarier than it already is if he can come out the gate and show that he can hold down the hot corner and that he can start, I guess he can pick up where he left off at the end of last season, where he went nuts in the postseason for Oregon State. So Trent Caraway is storyline number 2. Storyline number 3 for me, if a few weeks into fall practices and scrimmages, we hear that William Schmidt looks like a new and improved version of himself, the rest of the league may be in a lot of trouble. All right. Why did I choose William Schmidt as one of my big, storylines of the fall? Well, we already know what Case and Evans can do. All right. I have no doubt that he can step in and be your Friday night guy. We understand what Zach Cowan is and what he gives you. I feel pretty good about Jaden Newt's progression over the years. All guys I feel really good about. I saw what Maverick Rizzi did this summer. And I'll be honest, if there's one guy that I think is going to go just wild, it's Maverick Rizzi. I've said that for, all summer. I think he has everything needed to just be an incredible pitcher and make a huge leap. All right. But Schmidt is still sort of a wait and see. He didn't pitch this summer. I know he did some specific work Jay had him doing, but we didn't see him pitch this summer. So I don't really know. Like Maverick Rizzi, I saw what he did when he got more innings and he threw a lot of strikes. What the breaking ball looked like, it was nasty. I didn't see this from William Schmidt. So going into this fall season, that's a big wild card for me. We're talking about the highest rated player to ever step foot on LSU's campus. The number 5 player in his freshman class last year. And I've done this before, but if you look at the top 10 player by perfect game, top 10 players, I think 7 of them went in the first round. The other ones were William Schmidt, Derek Curiel, and I might be the guy he's Franco plays at TCU. He's going to be a top round pick this coming draft. So just ultra talented guy. I mean, Major League Baseball, MLB pipeline going into the draft when we didn't know if William Schmidt was going to make it to school. He was the number 16 prospect, number 16 in the first round. I mentioned before, Joe Doyle just put out his, 2027 MLB draft, the top prospects in college. William Schmidt was the number 5 pitcher. So he was number 16 overall in that class. And you might say, we haven't really seen him do anything yet. Look, he was 7-0 last year. I know there were times when we saw him pitch, especially in conference situations, and he couldn't land the breaking ball, so he got very predictable. It was a command thing. But I think he did get valuable innings, and there were times, where he closed out games, and he looked really good. So if he can come out in the fall and shows that he's capable of throwing strikes, that breaking ball gets back to what it was in high school, where he can throw it on command with the big spin. He can start throwing that changeup like we saw at times last year. That changes a lot for this pitching staff, in my opinion. So that's my number 3 storyline is William Schmidt. Number 4 is, what is the status of Gavin Guidry and Devin Sheeran? These are two guys who missed 2025 for different reasons. For Gavin Guidry, it was a back injury. Devin Sheeran, it was a knee injury. Now, I did see Devin Sheeran pitch pretty much all his outings this summer on the Cape. And look, he looked good. Like his velocity was up to 97. His slider is unbelievable, guys. Like when you see his slider, it is filthy. I think of Maverick Rizzi because his slider was unhittable this summer. Little different shape, but Sheeran's got the stuff. His command was lacking, which I would expect for a guy who didn't pitch all year with an injury. So, and Jay said that he pitched his outings, thinking through 11 innings, and then he went and worked with wherever William Schmidt and Cooper Williams were. They were working on specific stuff. So Coach has a plan for him, and that is an exciting arm. When you're trying to project a guy like Gage Jump that you think can be really good, but he's coming off injury, or Chase Shores, a Devin Sheeran, you just like they have all the makings of like this guy can be a stud high draft pick, but you just don't know until you see it. So I'm very eager to see what he's got in the fall. The other one is Gavin Guidry, and I'll be honest, Jay Johnson's press conference today, it was a little puzzling because he said that, we still have some kind of physical marks that he has to hit, and that you'll probably see him pitch more at the back of the fall, like the second half, which, guys, that strikes me as odd. I mean, this is a back injury that's been going on for a year now. And I'm not like a Debbie Downer. I don't like doubt when coach tells us something about an injury. I'm not doing that. It's just amazing to me that this is going on this long. And I know, look, backs are a serious thing. When you've got a bad back and, it's just, I know it's a big injury, but I'm just very surprised by that. But I mentioned Gavin Guidry because as a freshman in 2023, I mean, like, this is a guy that got the last out in the College World Series. He was one of the guys you brought in to close out games. And he brings just a grit. He brings, a calm leadership. And I think you've already got like a very good core group of pitchers. Now we need to see who elevates their game because you need you need starters. But like Gavin Guidry is just another very good arm that if you can count on him, it makes the pitching staff even that much better. So that's storyline number 4 for me is the two guys coming off injuries, Devin Sheeran and Gavin Guidry. And number 5 is who in this freshman class will make the easiest transition to college ball and show that they can make an immediate impact. Because Jay is going to play freshmen. He does it every year. All right. Let's look at position player-wise. In 2022, Josh Pearson started 35 games, all right? He hit like 299 with 9 home runs, but like he was a major part of that postseason team in most of the second half of the year, all right? 2023, Jared Jones had 47 starts. I think he played in 50-something games on the team that won the College World Series. He hit 304 with, 14 home runs, 50 RBIs. So 2024, Stephen Milam as a freshman made 60 starts. And we know about his heroics down the stretch. Last year, 2025, Derek Hurriel made 68 starts. I think he started every game. All right. So Jay Johnson is not afraid to play freshmen. Pitchers, 2022, Jay Johnson's first year. Sam Dutton made 11 starts, and I think all, or at least majority of those, like at least 9 were in the SEC. 2023, I already mentioned it, Gavin Guidry had 23 appearances. 2024, Cade Anderson, 18 appearances, 9 starts. And then last year, you could pick a bunch of them. Maverick Rizzi leads the team with 24 appearances. Cooper Williams, 21 appearances. Casey Evans, 19 appearances, 3 starts. Every appearance was like high leverage. William Schmidt, 17 appearances with 6 starts. So I'm very interested to see. I know a lot of this freshman class, 8 of them went into the MLB draft, but you still have great players. I mean, look, Jack Ruckert from Catholic High, this is the number 83 player in the nation. Ethan Claus, the number 105 player in the nation by perfect game. I mean, I think Landon Hodge was the number 105 player in this past class, and he got drafted he got like $1 million in the draft. So, like, you're talking about players on campus that we don't talk about a lot because maybe they weren't projected as high draft picks. But there's guys that can play, and both of those guys are left-handed hitting shortstop. So we love that. Now, look, they're probably not going to see time at shortstop this year, but it's still important to develop those guys. They're going to get opportunities to play during the fall and show what they can do. And you never know. This is a wide open infield. All right. The infield is up for grabs. Look, what about, can Omar Cerna, can he push Kate Arambidi? I mean, this is a top 40 player in the nation. Another guy that we were really fortunate to get on campus. William Patrick, Major League Pipeline had him as the number 90 prospect entering the 2025 draft. Now, it's a tough position to crack because every starting outfielder is back, but uber talented. I mean, this is a pro talent guy that you're going to have that's going to get opportunity to show what he's got during the fall. So, can he step right in and show, that he's worthy of at-bats? What about Mason Braun? He's the number 64 player in the nation. He's the number 1 player in Indiana. He's a first baseman, outfielder. Look, the dude can hit. Jay Johnson mentioned him today. I mentioned this once before, but he was invited to the MLB Combine leading into the draft this past year, and he hit the furthest home run at the Combine. It was like 460 feet or something. So the guy can really, really match. So, and as I said, there's a lot of open positions on this infield. So probably first base is a good position for a freshman maybe to break in. But look, he's going to have competition there with big guy Zach York and who knows, maybe Dardar, guys like that. And then look, on the mound, this isn't 2025 where you have 4 freshmen that were that capable of stepping right in, but you do have a couple, and Marco Paz. I've said this a bunch. You hear it a lot said now. This is very similar to Cade Anderson. Was potentially going to be one of the top 2 right-handed pitchers chosen in this draft, but he had Tommy John July 1st of 2024. So he did not get selected in the draft. Now, he was throwing bullpens. He was up to 96 mile per hour with very good spin on his breaking ball when he was throwing for scouts prior to this year's draft. So, he looks good, really good. But he's a guy that can step right in and help you. Reagan Ricken, very athletic, another big-time arm. I mean, both of these guys were major draft risks. So Tigers were fortunate to get both of them. So that's my 5th storyline, is just as we see these freshmen kind of come in, who's going to stand out to us? And look, and if they don't stand out right away, that's fine too. But it's always something that piques my interest. And look, this coaching staff is so good at development. We lose sight of this. Sometimes we see players, like a lot of these freshmen come in and they don't play right away and they leave. But the way that this coaching staff develops every player on the roster is really evidenced by, you see some of these guys that leave and they go elsewhere and they have incredible years. Like I'm thinking of Ryan Kucherak. Yeah, he didn't play a lot his freshman year, but he was developed. He goes to Northwestern and he's one of like the top 10 projected shortstops in this coming draft. All right. Austin Rolig, Didn't really play at LSU his freshman year. He goes to Utah. He's had a great year. I think he's more of like a third baseman now. But that's another guy who's going to get his name called in the draft. Micah Bucknam, as you know, talking about a pitcher, spent a couple of years, goes to DBU, winds up being their Friday night guy. So this staff is great at development. So, even if these guys aren't ready right away, the high school class, they're going to get poured into. And this coaching staff is going to coach them up. And it's another year with all these coaches back together. I don't remember the names, but Jay Johnson said today he's actually bringing in a couple of like player development guys coming in. I think one guy that played for him. I can't remember the other one. So just, you're talking about the best coaches you could ever want to play for. And so just a great place to be. I mean, these guys are so fortunate to be able to start their career at LSU, and got high hopes for them and this team in general. I'm so excited about this year. I know it sounds silly because it's football season now, but before you know it, we're going to be, into fall practices and the holidays, and then it's boom, it's winter, and here it comes. Here comes the start of the season. So, as always, thanks so much for giving me how much time did we spend here? 35 minutes or so. Talking about the fall and starting season 2 of Inside LSU Baseball Podcast. I don't know necessarily that I'll be back, every so often with the podcast right now, but I will. Please follow me on Twitter. I'll be active on Twitter, continuing to tweet about the upcoming recruiting class as we start getting commitments, anything going on with the fall workouts, as well as some of the guys who move on to pro ball. And then when we start to have more things happening on the field, we'll pick back up with the podcast episode. So again, as always, thanks so much for joining me, and it's going to be a great year. And hopefully you join me the whole time, and I'll keep putting this content out if you keep listening to it. So thanks so much, and we will talk to you soon.